So, a fresh new week has arrived, and here on this channel, that means one thing and one thing only. Every weekend, I post an episode of this series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week based on what's going on at the time, and I then choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week, even more free agency signings were made, clearing the market of so many of the top players available, and trade rumors and news have dominated the headlines. So of course, we have plenty to discuss. In order to submit your takes, I make a community post on either the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you see on your screen now, so if you want a chance to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Vesper, and he says that Brandon Miller is about to follow in the footsteps of former top 5 draft pick Josh Jackson, who played the same position and couldn't live up to the hype. So regarding draft discussions and debates, one of the most prevalent ones over the last few weeks has been the Brandon Miller vs. Scoot Henderson debates. They play different positions, so a lot of the conversation has been about whether you should draft more for fit, or if you should take swings at talent regardless of how your team is currently constructed. We've now arrived at the beginning of the NBA Summer League, where we get to see the first glimpses of these young players on the court representing their new teams, and with it has come some not so great showings from Brandon Miller. The appeal with Miller as a prospect was that he was a great defensive talent in college, he shot the ball very well from the perimeter, and he's got good size and physical tools at his disposal. The problem, though, that I think a lot of people overlooked with his game was the fact that he hasn't really been very good creating for himself off the dribble, and especially when he got to the paint, his touch around the basket was pretty questionable in his one season at Alabama. I'll be honest, I always viewed him as someone who could excel in the 3-and-D role because of this, and am still very strongly on the Scoot Henderson side of the debate. But when it comes to Summer League, I'm not here to overreact, yet I'm also not here to pretend that there isn't writing on the wall. Brandon Miller has committed 15 fouls in his 2 Summer League games so far. He's committed 12 turnovers in those 2 games so far, and he had 18 points in his first game, then 6 points in his second game, but that 18-point outing is pretty deceiving because he was really struggling shooting the ball through 3 quarters, then in the 4th quarter he racked up most of those points while the team was being blown out. Going back to the original take, Josh Jackson actually has an eerie number of similarities to Miller. They play the same position, they have similar size and frame, both were projected to be stout defenders but struggled with the physicality at the next level, and Jackson was actually a pretty good shooter in college, but his shot and overall scoring ability struggled to translate in the NBA. I do believe Miller is a much better shooter than Josh Jackson ever was, but outside of that, I don't see the star potential in him that others do either. The next take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Kyle, and he says that Dallas still hasn't done enough this offseason to convince Luka Doncic to stay long-term. This one caught my eye when I saw it submitted, because I actually pretty firmly disagree with this. Every move the Mavericks have made this offseason has been positive and taken the team in the right direction after the miserable finish they had to this past year. Last season, when they traded for Kyrie Irving and missed the playoffs, there were a lot of difficult pills needed to swallow about the group that they had, and while guys like Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving got a brunt of the blame and criticism because that's what comes with the territory of being the best players, the reality is that their issues went much deeper than that. Blaming their problems on those 2 players not being good enough together is honestly pretty casual and lazy for a narrative to push, because the fact of the matter is that the Mavericks top to bottom were flawed. The team's defense defense was abysmal because they had no rim protection whatsoever and struggling perimeter defenders. They were dealing with injuries to quite a few of their key players, and guys who were signed to big contracts as role players were severely underperforming. This offseason, the Mavericks moved off of Davis Bertans' contract, which was taking up space providing nothing. They did it while trading down in the draft just to still land the prospect that they likely wanted anyway, being Derek Lively from Duke, who has the potential to be a tremendous shot blocker inside. They acquired Grant Williams in a trade to solidify their front court defense, and they acquired him to be a guy who continues to shoot 40% from 3 on a steal of a contract. And most importantly, they convinced Kyrie Irving to re-sign with them on a contract both worth less than the Supermax and for just 3 years, so they didn't have to fully lock themselves into a 5-year deal with him. These are all very solid steps in the right direction for the team, and if anything, it should show even more that they are committed to doing right by Luka Doncic. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Short Bala, and he says that the real winners of the offseason so far are the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder are probably in the best position of all of the rebuilding teams in the NBA, and right now, they're easily the most popular pick I'm seeing by fans around the league to take a leap next year. Not to hop on the bandwagon or anything, but I have to admit I absolutely see why that's the case. Every single year, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander seems to get better and better, and already he's performing like a superstar out there, ranking in the top 5 scoring the ball this past season. Their young core loves playing together, the talent they have all seem to buy into competing hard on both ends of the floor, and without even needing to take a big swing in trades or free agency, they managed to be able to come back even better. Last season, they made the play-in tournament and nearly played their way into a playoff spot, and they did it without the guy that they drafted with the number 2 pick in last year's draft. Chet Holmgren missed his entire first year in the NBA, but now he's back ready to make a ton of noise. He's played 2 Summer League games this year so far, and in those games, he has 7 total blocked shots, picking right back up where he left off, as someone who projects to be a menace defensively around the basket. He's also done a lot of good things offensively, but I'll be honest, his scoring output is probably going to be pretty inconsistent for a while as he bulks up and gets used to competing against NBA-level talent. Then on top of being able to add him to their rotation this year, the Thunder also added former EuroLeague MVP and champion Vasilij Micić. He's not someone who many of the average fans will be familiar with, but he is a point guard who has dominated Europe with his tremendous court vision and passing talent, while also shooting it very well from deep. He'll be a great fit alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and should make his life even easier, being able to handle some of the playmaking duties to take that off of Shai's shoulders. He's an experienced veteran with huge game, and in a locker room filled with youth, he could be the steady presence needed to help take them to the playoffs this year or more. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the takes we discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.